Music theory. I know that this topic is extremely scary for a lot of guitar players out there. Should have been a Halloween episode, really. But what's even more scary is imagining the life of a guitar player that never studies theory. This poor guy will always play the exact same riffs and solos throughout his entire career. He will never really be able to figure out which scales to use over which chord. He won't be able to visualize the fretboard at all, always feeling lost and confused, and he will never become the musician he always wanted to be. Now that's a horror story if I ever heard one, but it has a happy ending. In this video I want to show you 5 of my absolute best and most powerful music theory tricks that are actually super easy, and they will immediately infuse your playing with fresh, new, interesting ideas. So let's get started with trick number 1 right away. So one of the biggest frustrations I hear pretty much every single day from my students on Patreon is coming up with kind of a cool idea but not knowing how to follow it up, so not being able to turn it into a full song. All the other ideas that I added to it sound completely random, and let's be honest, most rock and metal players basically just throw riffs together, so they never really think about composing in a key. And please trust me on this is something you absolutely want to learn. It pretty much changed my life, and here's one of the best examples for it. So some of you might recognize this first exercise. It's the main riff for Dopamine, which is one of the most successful songs and music videos I posted on my main channel so far. And the reason why this riff works so well and sounds kind of melodic and catchy, although there are a lot of notes in it, I made the conscious decision of writing it in a key. So I based the majority of my ideas in this song around the sound of F Dorian. Here are the notes of the F Dorian scale, and as you might know, when you add the 3rd and 5th to all of these scale notes, only using notes you can find in the scale, you get the chords that you can find in F Dorian. So for the main riff, when I started out writing this song, I just chose a simple and super catchy chord progression. That sounds pretty cool and melodic already, but not that interesting. So I started by making the chords a bit more interesting. Instead of this quite boring F minor chord, I was playing an F minor add 9 chord. So I just moved my pinky right here on the 12th fret on the G string. That alone sounds more interesting right away. And then in addition to these chords that I was playing with my fretting hand, I was just visualizing the scale and some arpeggios in a higher section of the neck. So I was always visualizing the scale and thinking in the key that I was composing in, and that way I immediately found very melodic solutions for my riff. All the chords fit together as well, obviously, because they consist out of notes that you can actually find in the scale. Of course, rules like this are meant to be broken, and we will do that a bit later, but when it comes to songwriting and getting creative, this will truly change your life. Now for trick number 2, I would like to talk a little bit about scales. A message that I get frequently on Patreon is, help, I'm always playing the same licks, most of the time pentatonic stuff. And spoiler alert, there's nothing wrong with the pentatonic scale, but I want to show you my favorite and super easy trick that will allow you to infuse your pentatonic licks with a bit of a more advanced sound without learning complicated scales all across the neck that you will probably never really use. And this trick is all about memorizing the one important note in certain scales that really brings out the sound and flavor of the scale, and simply adding that one important note to your pentatonic licks. So let's start with a relatively harmless one, the natural minor scale. My favorite note in this scale that I really like to accent in my music is the 2nd one, so the major 2nd. So what I often do to spice up my pentatonic licks just a little bit is only adding that major 2nd in my pentatonic lick. Here's how this sounds like in a practical context. So by just adding that one note, it immediately sounds a bit more advanced, but not in a flashy way. It's still very melodic. Let's take it one step further for a more exotic variation of this. Here's how it sounds like when I add the characteristic note of the harmonic minor scale instead. So once again, almost all the notes and the structure of the lick were exactly the same. I was just adding that raised 7th scale degree, so a major 7th interval, which is the characteristic note of the harmonic minor scale. So I suddenly got a pentatonic lick with a harmonic minor touch, which is super cool. And of course you can also do this with the modes. Here's an example for Dorian. So once again, all the notes of the pentatonic scale, I was just adding that one characteristic Dorian note, the major 6, and added a really cool Dorian flavor to my pentatonic style playing by only remembering this one note I have to add. The next trick is about advanced, kind of unexpected note grouping. What that means is when you usually play eighth notes, for example, you tend to group them in even numbers, so 2 or 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or when you play triplets, of course, you group the notes that you're playing in groups of 3 most of the time, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on. But what happens when you play a lick in triplets and you group the notes in groups of 5 instead? Check it out. So that sounds super interesting in my opinion and very advanced, although it's not that hard. I was just playing 5 notes. And the challenge with this is continuing, so really feeling the triplets, but you're not playing 3 notes. So this can take a while until you're used to it, but I hope that you can hear that thinking like this results in much more interesting and advanced sounding phrasing ideas pretty much right away. Here's what happens when I play pretty much the identical lick, but I'm playing 16th notes and I'm grouping those 16th notes in groups of 5. Check it out. So that's the same system and trick, but it sounds completely different. When I'm playing it without a backing track or without a metronome, you can't really tell if I'm playing triplets or 16th notes, which is quite interesting. You just hear that group of 5. So please give both of these variations a try. Those are awesome ideas for your next guitar solo or improvised take. So the helpful tricks I just discussed in this video are really just the small tip of the music theory iceberg. This goes way deeper, of course, and there are much more helpful and important topics. If you like this video and this tip so far, make sure to check out the full music theory course I made for my Patreon community. After completing this easy and super fun course, you will finally know absolutely everything you need to know about music theory. So no overly complicated systems that you will never actually use. Only super practical tips and tricks that will change your playing right away, just like the ones I shared with you in this video. But if you finally want a more structured approach that leads you from start to finish without clicking on random YouTube videos and constantly getting lost, just join my Patreon community today with the links down below. It's the biggest guitar community on Patreon with over 10,000 active members. You get access to 20 guitar courses right away. So if you're still not part of this, what are you waiting for? Join us today with the link down below to finally see all the awesome possibilities on the fretboard that you are currently not seeing and missing whenever you're picking up a guitar. It will really pay off in the long run. Let's talk a bit about good old chords. What I want to show you right now is a scary combination of words known as modal interchange. Again, this sounds much more complicated than it actually is. If you played a couple of campfire chords and chord progressions, you will have noticed that most of them sound kind of boring after a while. So what this actually is just a super easy trick of immediately spicing up chord progressions or riffs like this by borrowing one or even more chords from a different key. Here's an example of that. Let's test your ears. Guess which of these chords I'm borrowing from a different key. If you guessed F minor, you were right. I borrowed this chord from the C minor scale. So instead of only playing that F major chord that I have in the C major scale, I borrowed the F minor chord, and this sounds really awesome. It's essentially a completely wrong chord in the context of C major because it has a minor third in there that's not in the scale. Should be a major third, but you would be surprised how often you can get away with borrowing chords. So when you start out with the modal interchange, this is the easiest way to give it a try. When you're composing in the major scale, just check out the chords in the minor scale. Try to fit one of those in your chord progression, for example on the 4th scale degree. That's quite a popular option. And have fun spicing up boring chord progressions in pretty much the easiest way possible. Let's do something really cool for today's final trick. Let's talk about chromatic medians. To get started with this, we quickly have to define the words diatonic and chromatic. So diatonic basically means in the key. So if we're talking about C major, the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Something like G sharp, however, is not in the key of C, so that would be described as chromatic. So that's the first word in there. What about the second one? The term median refers to the third chord in a diatonic set. So basically a chromatic median is just an altered median chord. So the root note of this changed chord is either a major or minor third interval above or below that of the tonic. So let's hear an example of this right away. When I throw in an A flat major chord in the key of C major, I get a really cool and dramatic sounding result just like this. The reason why this works is something I tried to show with how I was playing this chord. As you can see, the notes in that A flat major chord are actually very close to the rest of the notes in the progression. It even contains the tonic C, also A flat, which is just one semitone away from A, and it's an awesome music theory trick to have in your arsenal when you want to write more interesting chord progressions or riffs. Alright my friends, that's it for today's video. Make sure to head over to Patreon right now to download all of your practice files for this episode. As I mentioned in this video, you also get access to my full music theory course over there that will take you step by step from beginner music theory topics to advanced topics in just 30 days, so that you finally get rid of all those annoying theory blind spots like not knowing which scales or chords to play. Trust me, it's really worth it to finally eliminate those frustrations. Just click the link below, join today, and I will see you on Patreon. See you over there. Greetings from Vienna and bye bye.